firing up right off early. Not the first week. A lot of times you don't do a whole lot, but getting sworn in and swearing everybody, the officers in. But it's good to get right to work, and maybe we'll get our work done so we can get out in June instead of August. No, we're really, the leadership is trying to push for late April, first part of May. So we actually, got to stick right with it and get our work done. I like to have the committee members introduce themselves, and then Secretary Tebbetts will have you introduce your guests. So, Chris, are you there?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Senator Chris Pearson from Chittenden.
Right.
Good morning, Senator Anthony Polina, Washington County.
Brian Collmore from the Rutland District.
Corey Parent from Franklin County and Alberg.
Yeah, and I'm Bobby Starr from Essex, Orleans County. So we want to welcome all you folks from the Ag Agency to our first meeting, and maybe we'll get an overview from you folks in regards to what has transpired at the agency and in the ag community while we've been gone. So I guess I'll just turn it over to you, Secretary Tebbetts, and go from there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you, all the senators again. Again, Anson Tebbetts with the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. We've got the whole herd with you today from the agency. We've got a lot of our directors with us. Diane Boffel's with us. Abby Willard from Agdev is with us. Dr. Haas is with us. Rebecca Harvey, director of our lab in Randolph. Carrie Jaguar is with us, and Laura DePietro is with us, and also our counsel, Steve Collier. So we'll be popping in and out depending on their schedules, but I thought maybe I would just, as the chairman said, give you a brief update of what's transpired over the last time since we met when you adjourned in May. And I would say it's been extremely busy time for us since you've adjourned. Of course, our focus has been on the health and safety of those that are making their living off the land. The pandemic has been a roller coaster for all of us. We are extremely thankful to our farmers, producers, truckers, clerks, inspectors, and all the workers are in around the food system. They have delivered under extreme conditions, and they continue to deliver under this latest wave. From the farm, we've worked closely with healthcare professionals to make sure farm workers got the services they needed if they were sick, or if they need to be vaccinated or receive a booster. Many times those shots were delivered right on the farm. We're grateful for the help of the UVM Extension and Bridges for Health program, and the Department of Health for working with us and the farm community. It's been a great partnership for all of us. We are also keeping an eye on stress and the mental health of the ag community. The agency was successful in receiving a $500,000 grant from USDA recently to make sure our farmers and producers have the resources they need to address mental health issues and stress on the farm. Diane Boffel is leading that effort for us here at the agency. So that was some welcome news from USDA to the state of Vermont to help us with that. We know it's an issue outside of agriculture as well, but this is dedicated right to the folks in and around the farm. The economic health, again, front and center, has been stressful as well for many of our farmers and producers. While there have been some bright spots, many returning to buying local or purchasing more food at farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, or through e-commerce, Labor has created many issues in the ag sector. Bottom line is we really need more workers. Vermont's dairy plants, our meat plants, they need more workers. Our meat processing facilities are stressed, and we also need more truckers, and we need more farm workers. It's across and you're going to be hearing this not only with the Agency of Agriculture, but across other agencies of the need to work on workforce development. Since 2010, Vermont has lost 30,000 workers. This means it's becoming harder to get food to homes, to supermarkets, to co-ops, food banks, restaurants in Vermont and across the region because of lack of help. It also means many of our companies are not reaching their full potential because they do not have the workers that they need. We recently met with a number of managers of several companies over the last few months. The traditional strategies of recruitment are in place, but more work needs to be done in this area. Companies need affordable housing for their workers. We're hearing that repeatedly. They want great schools for their kids, and they want to be able to afford to live, work, and play in their communities. The agency continues to look for opportunities for our farmers, our producers, and our companies to grow. So we'll be working on workforce development as well. A couple of program updates for you. The Working Lands Program received much more funding last year. We are grateful for that. Shortly, we'll announce a series of grants to meat processors to expand their operations. As you may recall, you put a little extra money dedicated to the meat processing world in the program last year. More than $500,000 was allocated just to the meat industry in Vermont, and we'll be announcing those grants shortly as that board has met and made their deliberations on that. And the need was great, as we will announce a little bit later on. Just one strategy, though, on meat, it will take more dollars and several avenues to allow more local meat to be processed. Recently, the Agency of Agriculture worked with 2 meat companies, and they received federal grants to expand. A couple highlights, Happy Bird Poultry in Isle Mott and Henry's Market were awarded $200,000 grants from USDA, and only 167 companies across the United States were awarded grants in this program, but 2 of them were successful in Vermont, and we were pleased to help them with the application, working with them on that. So that will allow them to expand their operations, and that's great to hear. We're also encouraged by USDA. There was an announcement this week. They are going to invest in more regional processing operations. So we look for that program to be rolled out, because during the pandemic, we realized that the consolidation of the meat industry really had a profound impact on what we were seeing at the supermarkets. So those programs we will be watching closely as they roll those out over the next few months. Those are USDA programs. I want to talk about dairy a little bit. Vermont, as you know, is a community, and rural economies depend on dairy. Nearly 65% of the state's agriculture receipts are directly attributable to dairy, while close to 80% of the open land is managed by dairy farmers. Vermont produces 2/3 of all the milk in New England, bringing close to $2 billion in economic activity to the state of a year. So it's vitally important. We know the current federal pricing system is frustrating to our farmers and not working in their best interests to the producers. We're currently working with our counterparts in all regions of the country on a strategy to address this issue. We need to look at the market orders. From New Mexico to Wisconsin to Pennsylvania, this group of ag secretaries and commissioners that I'm involved in, they hope to deliver a series of recommendations to USDA and Congress. We know it's complicated, and we know it's a heavy lift, but we must try to address this issue in the coming weeks and months. Some current hot button issues related to dairy. You probably heard there were problems in the organic dairy market this summer. Horizon announced it was dropping 28 producers in Vermont. some others in Maine and New York and New Hampshire as well. The agency set up a task force after this announcement, and we were fortunate to have the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center housed at the Agency of Agriculture, and working with the task force led by Diane Boffel and Laura Ginsburg and a number of partners across the region, we've come up with a series of recommendations that will try to address these issues, all farmer focused, to make sure that these businesses can stay on the farm and part of our economy. The regional system is what we're focused on. The Secretary of Ag in Washington, Secretary Vilsack, wanted us to work with the Dairy Business Innovation Center on some of the aspects of this issue. So we've delivered a report to the Secretary, which is under his deliberation now. We're working on distribution challenges, increasing consumer awareness, supporting these farms and creameries, and being more competitive in the marketplace. We think these not only will help the organic market, but will help others that are in the dairy industry as well, because many of the same issues that we're facing the Horizon farmers are facing our conventional market as well. So you'll be hearing more about that, and I would encourage you at some point to maybe have Laura Ginsburg in to look at what's happening with the Dairy Business Innovation Center. It's really providing some needed dollars to our farmers to look at new approaches, everything from distribution to marketing to new practices on the land. I want to speak about water quality a little bit too. We're making progress there. We have very stringent environmental laws, some of the most stringent in the United States, and our Vermont farmers continue to change their practices to improve the environment. More than 94% of the phosphorus reductions to date have come from the ag sector in a very short period of time. Only a few years into this law, we're seeing tremendous progress on the land and in the water. We're also looking at other ways, innovative ways to improve the environment. This month, you're going to hear more, and we're launching the Pay for Performance program. We're encouraging dairy farmers to sign up for that program. From now until January 31st, dairy farmers and farmers can apply to this Vermont Pay for Phosphorus program. This will compensate dairy farms statewide for phosphorus load reductions from their crops and hayfields. It's supported by a USDA grant, and over the next few years, $4.9 million in payments will be made to farmers. And that's income for farmers, which will help them, but will also help the environment. Most current programs now provide direct assistance to farmers for installing practices. This new program is a bit different. It will take a more data-driven approach and pay for the outcomes. So it's paying for the outcomes. It recognizes the conservation practices generate value to the public and will directly compensate farms for value of that conservation. So we're excited about that program. We are encouraging farmers to sign up for that program this month. And hopefully with the data, they'll be able to receive some payments. We also continue to look at a number of other programs related to water quality. We're involved in enforcement. We're involved in programs that build infrastructure to contain manure, et cetera. So those programs are being rolled out. We did receive a little extra money this year from the Clean Water Fund to help with the best management practices, the BMP program. So that was encouraging as well. A little here and there updates from the agency. We've got a lot going on. Our lab in Randolph was up and running, it continues to be up and running, helping with water quality and supporting all the programs at the agency, as well as the programs with the Agency of Natural Resources. The lab in Randolph, relatively new, been open a couple of years, has been open during the entire pandemic and continues to provide a valuable service to Vermonters. We have other programs that are serving Vermonters. Many of our key program leaders are with me today, and they're more than welcome to go into more detail with you if you have questions. But we have programs that are from consumer assurance, from our Maple program. We did receive some more marketing money from Maple to move Maple outside of our borders to other parts of the country. So that will be kicking off this summer. We're talking about the program with Hemp as that continues to grow. We have our program managers talking about groundwater to soils. We have inspectors ready to talk about what's happening at the milk house and at the dairy plants. And all those folks are with us on the line today. So this is just a few of the things to get the conversation going, Mr. Chairman, but we know that your issues are very complex at times, have many layers. As always, we stand ready to assist, and we're focused on coming out of this pandemic with programs that are meaningful, that are focused on protecting the most vulnerable. We want to grow the economy, and we want to make it more affordable for all of us. So with that, I'll leave it there and happy to take questions. If you want to do a deeper dive into some of the other issues, please let us know, and we can try to do that with the other managers that are on the line right now.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Anson. Good report. I don't know if any of the members have questions for you right now or not, or if you'd like to introduce whoever's up next. I think we're very interested in the trying to make sure the 28 farmers at Horizon are going to have a home eventually. I believe I read somewhere where they extended their drop-off date an additional 6 months, maybe. And if that is enough time so that we can work that out, so those folks have a home.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Chairman. They were giving, Horizon did announce, and they were giving the farmers another 6 months, which was encouraging because we need the time. They need the time to do their business planning, understand where they might be headed. We've had a lot of conversations with some of the other organic buyers within the region. So they're evaluating whether they may be able to take on some of these dairy farmers. But what we can do, I'm going to send over the report that Laura Ginsburg and Diane Boffel put together. It's an extensive report on, I think there's 32 recommendations to address this issue in the Northeast. And we're happy to send that along to you. And we're hoping to hear from USDA over the next few weeks about how they may respond. Some of the things we're looking at are, infrastructure. We don't have a lot of organic processing within Vermont and the region. So that's one of the things that we think USDA might be able to address. We're looking at, the standards, the livestock standards as well, to making sure we have a level playing field. Also looking at, trucking is a big issue. Horizon, that was one of the issues that led them to discontinue buying here in the Northeast, is the cost of trucking from here to their nearest plants in Virginia and near Buffalo, I think it was. So there's a lot of recommendations in there. It's a really detailed report. We had a number of partners that helped us with that. And we were fortunate to have the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center with all those regional partners, because the USDA did want to address it as a regional issue, not just solely a state by state. New York also had another organic producer that was, I think it's Maple Hill, that also announced that they were no longer going to be picking up some of their farmers. So that there were two things going on in New York as well, with two producers, two companies saying they weren't going to pick up milk. So we're happy to do a deep dive on that at some point, and we'll forward along to Linda the full report so you can get a handle on what some of those recommendations are, and hopefully USDA will respond soon so we can get the ball rolling on some of those needs.
Oh, thank you. Any questions from committee members of Anson? No. The other issue, well, there's many others, but last year we put quite a lot of effort into getting extra money for meat packing, meat cutting, and you did talk about that to some extent. Has that really gone along in a decent way, or are we just getting headed
Yeah.
in the right direction with it?
We certainly are headed in the right direction with it. We're hearing some activity from the private sector to stand up more facilities as well. So our team is working with those, but the need is still out there. We're still hearing from farmers of bottlenecks. Granted, the investments that we are allocating these dollars have not reached the ground yet, so they haven't made these improvements. But it's in the meat sector, a lot of this equipment to make it more efficient, some of it can be $300,000, $500,000 to make a real difference. So it's going to take lots of avenues of funding. That's why we were encouraged by these two producers in Bennington and Isle of Mont. They were able to receive these $200,000 investments from USDA that really will help them, get more local poultry out. Poultry continues to be a need in stores, so they'll be able to ramp up and do more work. And then I think on the regional side, we're going to have to take a closer look at USDA and how they're going to approach investing some significant dollars within the region to help with this. Some of the areas that still need, I still hear from lamb and pork producers, they're having trouble, getting their animals processed. But all this bit by bit is helping, and we're all focused on it. And we are so grateful that we were able to receive those extra dollars through the Working Lands Program. Those announcements should be coming out in January, and then hopefully over the summer and fall, things will get a little bit better and people can expand. But there is a great demand for local meat right now.
Yeah. And one other issue before you go to someone else. This fall, there was quite a lot of chat and concern about the bridge program, loan program that's run by ACCD, about how, we were promoting farmers applying for that, for help. And the way it all shook out at the end was not many farmers qualified to meet because of the way the program was designed and set up, along with many other small businesses. And the bulk of the money is still sitting in the treasury and not getting out. So have you talked with ACCD or someone from the agency in regards to fixing the problem with that loan program or grant program?
Yeah. Yes, Senator, the bridge program, and we've encouraged all our farmers and those in agriculture to take a look at that program. We have had some dairy farmers that have qualified and received payments under that. Diane Boffell has been working with folks and also folks at Farm Viability. But sometimes these programs, either from the federal side, from what the requirements are, and then from the state side, sometimes can get a little too complicated. So as you make your deliberations, we're always encouraging everyone to be really flexible and try to make sure that as many people that can qualify. But I think that one, there is going to be some dollars that may be left over, and I know the administration probably be putting some proposals together to figure out what do we do with that money? Can we repurpose it? Can we figure out a way so more people might be able to qualify for that program? But that's all to be determined, and I know you folks will be looking at it as well.
Yep. Any other questions from any committee members? If not, who would you like to
Well,
go next?
why don't we turn over to Dr. Haas is with us, and Dr. Haas is our state veterinarian, but also manages a number of different programs from consumer assurance. And Dr. Haas, I think I want to talk about a couple of animal health issues. You know, is we're always keeping our eye on some diseases that are on our border that we need to keep an eye on. We've also had some issues that have gone into the opiate world, where we have a drug out there now that's being used. It's hurting our people. It's a veterinarian drug that's gotten into the system, and for awareness, I think everyone should be aware of that as well. But Dr. Haas, I'll turn it over to you for a few highlights of your world. And Dr. Haas also, I think, put in the chat that we've seen some increased economic activity in the meat processing world, and she also oversees that program as well. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Haas.
Good morning.
Sure.
Well,
Nice to see you all. Welcome back to your squares on the screen. I selfishly wish we were in person, but understand why we are not. Perhaps we'll get to that point before the end of your session this year. So, but it's very nice to see you even in a virtual world. To follow up on Secretary Tebbett's introduction, I'll start with the opiate issue, because that has been one that we have been tracking. It's an unfortunate but interesting circumstance. So there is a veterinary sedative that is widely used in Vermont and elsewhere by veterinarians for the benefit of horses that get a little bit rowdy and don't like everything that vets or farriers or equine dentists do to them. So Xylazine is a drug that is used as a sedative. And apparently what has been happening is that this drug has gained popularity in the recreational drug use world. And so it is being, as I understand it now, combined with some other opiates to allegedly enhance whatever the experience is that people gain from that. And the challenge with that is that it is not a drug that is responsive to Narcan, which is often the first way that first responders and medical professionals will, a drug that gets administered to counter the effects of the opiates. So there have been some unfortunate situations that have stemmed from that. So the health department, our agency, this actually has caught the attention of the Vermont security sector. Our Vermont Intelligence Center is aware of this. The FBI is aware of it, and they have put out alerts. So it's something that we are trying to get the word out about, and we have done so through communications to the veterinary community, and have partnered with the Vermont Veterinary Medical Association about that. And the message has primarily been that people need to keep close track of doses of this medication that they may have on farms, that there may be in veterinary clinics and or mobile veterinary vehicles, and with an emphasis on trying to keep that drug secure. It's widely used. It is not a difficult drug for veterinarians to get a hold of, and it's an essential drug for veterinarians to have. So it has a very important use in veterinary medicine. We just want to work hard to keep it from bleeding over into other areas where it is not appropriate for use and can be quite dangerous to people. So that is something that we will continue to get the word out about and try to caution the veterinary community, as well as the animal ag sector, about the potential pitfalls associated with having that drug fall into the wrong hands. So that is kind of a quick overview, but happy to answer other questions on that. And then I can also provide some of the disease updates that Secretary Tebbett's mentioned. Would you like me to move on to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure. But maybe first, Dr. Haas, what do vets use this for on animals? Do they? few things.
Yeah, it's a sedative, and to put it in perspective, if you take a 1,000-pound horse, a typical dose of this injectable medication is anywhere from a half cc, a half of a milliliter, up to about 2 milliliters. So relatively small dose. It is in an injectable form. It's administered either intravenously or in the muscle, but most commonly intravenously. And it's used anytime that we need a horse, most commonly to be quiet. So for doing field-based surgeries, it can be used as a pre-anesthetic, for stitching up wounds, for floating or filing their teeth, for working on their feet, or paring out hoof abscesses or other things that might otherwise be painful. It takes the edge off. It has a bit of an analgesic effect, and it makes them sleepy. So we can navigate 1,000-pound animal with sharp hooves without getting hurt or having the horse get hurt.
Yep. Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doctor, I'm kind of just trying to get a sense of this substance. Is it a controlled substance? How do the vets get it? And how does someone from the general public get it? I'm a little confused.
It is a controlled substance, but in the world of controlled substances, there are degrees that are applicable to different types of drugs. So this is a controlled substance, but one that is, easy for veterinarians to obtain. And the way that veterinarians get it is to purchase it through a distributor that acquires it in turn from the manufacturer. It is not a drug that is available over the counter. You cannot go into Guy's Farm and Yard or any other agricultural supply store and obtain this drug. So it's certainly restricted in that regard. The way that people other than veterinarians would obtain the drug would be either through illicit activities. You may recall, and maybe this is the new version of what we previously dealt with, which was that there have been break-ins into animal hospitals for ketamine, was a popular drug that had some street appeal, I guess would be the way to say it. So people can get it through those sorts of illicit activities, as going to a farm call, a veterinarian going to a farm call and pulling their truck into the driveway, and then going to attend to individual or herds or flocks of animals. If the truck is left unlocked, then a savvy person might come by and say, hey, I know what could be in there, and let me go hunting. So that's another thing that there's the potential for. And then lastly, I would say that there is a potential risk associated with circumstances where veterinarians might leave an individual dose of this drug for use at a later time, and leave it in the hands of the owner. And therefore, there could be random circumstances where individual doses are on farms and potentially accessible to others. That practice is not encouraged. It's frowned upon, and hopefully, with this increased awareness, it is not happening that way. But those are some of the methods by which people could get their hands on it.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Doc. Now, I guess continue and have you set up or sent out bulletins to the Vermont vets and with the association, and so you folks are dealing with that, I take it?
Yes, we are trying to get the word out, and others are too. So we have maintained a distribution list. We're up to, I think, just under 200 veterinarians. So they have all gotten this message. The Vermont Veterinary Medical Association, which represents, I think at last count, about 78% of vets practicing in Vermont, have sent this information out. And then the Office of Professional Regulation under the Secretary of State's purview has sent this to all licensees, veterinary licensees. So they've had ample opportunity to receive the information, and we hope by duplicating the effort, if they ignore one email, they catch the next one. So that's been our MO so far.
Yeah. Thanks. So any other questions for Dr. Haas in regards to at this point? If not, you have some other issues, I think.
Well, just again, to follow up on Secretary Tebbett's reference to the disease things that we have been tracking, the couple of updates on that front, and I'm pleased, I'm going to knock on some wood without getting my dogs barking here, but so far we have not had an introduction of a foreign or high consequence disease, animal disease into Vermont, but the two that we are keeping an especially close eye on are African swine fever. That's the first one, and then highly pathogenic avian influenza. And African swine fever is one that has spread globally over the past year, most recently with introductions and a sustained presence in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. You may be aware that there is a fair bit of human traffic, normal human traffic that comes into New England from those areas, as well as product traffic. And African swine fever is not a disease that is communicable to people. It doesn't cause human illness, but it is a disease that causes pig illness and mortality or death, and a presence of that disease in either the United States or, certainly specifically in Vermont would have trade ramifications and would cause us to activate our disease response plan, and would kind of be an all hands on deck to mitigate that. So that's one that we are keeping a close eye on. It doesn't take pig to pig transmission is not required. This disease can be passed through pork products and other animal related products. It can be spread through debris on boots and other fomite types of spread. So it's one that we're keeping a close eye on. And what I have been shocked to be reminded of is the amount of product that people either accidentally or with malicious intent intentionally try to bring into Vermont. And these products are intercepted, Vermont and elsewhere, domestic transport. These products are intercepted by our partners at Customs and Border Protection. And so they play a huge role in this and intercepting these products with their sniffer dogs. So they're doing, all hands on deck, but there's always the chance that something gets through. The other thing that is unique in Vermont that we work continuously on is the wonderful progress that's been made about the diversion of food organic waste from landfills. And so one of the common ways that those products can be utilized is by use by farmers to feed these scraps to their pigs. And there is concern with that. And so we work very closely with other state agencies and with the animal ag sector to try and make sure that they maintain best practices and don't inadvertently feed meat products, either cured or frozen or otherwise, to their pigs, because that is a way that this disease can be spread. And then secondly, avian influenza. You may recall that the biggest animal disease outbreak in US history occurred in 2015, thereabouts, with a highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak. We're told by epidemiologists, both regionally and nationally and internationally, that the environmental conditions are right and are mimicking what was seen before that 2015 outbreak. So we are on high alert for avian influenza. Also, some of our the wild migratory birds that have been sampled by USDA's wildlife services and our state wildlife partners have been shown to be, have tested positive for some of these strains that could develop into a highly avian influenza virus. So high alert for that, and it's very important for producers to maintain good biosecurity on their farms. Related to that, we have been able, thanks to the good work of our Assistant State Veterinarian, Dr. Kate Levine, we've been able to update our avian influenza response plan and submit that to USDA. And what that means is if we were to have an outbreak, our farmers in Vermont, poultry producers, would be eligible for indemnification by USDA for any losses that they sustain. So that's a little bit of a silver lining, but certainly the goal that we have is to prevent an introduction here in Vermont into our domestic poultry populations. So those are just a couple of things we're keeping an eye on the disease front, and some progress we've made in that regard.
Yeah. Well, sounds like you've been busy and you're going to be that way for a while. So are there any other questions from committee members for Dr. Haas? If not, thank you, Dr. Haas.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll see you back in Montpelier sometime.
Sounds good.
Who's up next?
Mr. Chairman, I thought we'd turn it to Carrie Jaguar, who's our Director of Public Health and Agriculture Resource Management. A couple of things that Carrie was dealing with over the summer. We did have another pest that was spotted in Vermont, which was the spotted lanternfly, which is another one we're keeping our eye on. We've been talking about, ticks in the emerald ash borer, but another one that we're monitoring is the spotted lanternfly. And also a quick update on our hemp program and what's happening with USDA as well. So I'll turn it over to Carrie. Carrie.
Yeah.
Good
Morning,
morning,
Carrie.
Senators. Good morning, Senators. Good morning, Senator Starr. How are you?
Good, good.
I hope you all had a decent summer break.
Well, it was better than last year.
Well, good. Just a quick update on the hemp program, and that's sort of, we didn't know what we were going to do based on what was happening nationally. As you're aware, last year we extended the pilot program, which meant we were operating a program consistent with what was outlined in the 2014 Farm Bill. We didn't necessarily submit a plan that would have brought us up to the outline in the 2018 Farm Bill. There was talk congressionally that they were going to extend the authority for the 2014 Farm Bill or change the hemp program altogether. We were in contact with Leahy and Welch's office about those details. Nothing came to fruition in Washington, if you will. And about a month ago, we did submit a state plan consistent with the 2018 Farm Bill. It's going to have limited but not necessarily positive effects on some of our hemp growers, and particularly the smaller ones. The larger operations really won't see a lot of difference, other than they'll have to hire folks to take samples, and there'll be expenses on the other end that they're not used to seeing. But the smaller, even the personal grows, will have to be registered with FSA, and that's something that'll be new and cumbersome for folks doing personal grows that are, more than their 6 or 2 plants for your other cannabis. What's also happening in Vermont is I think a lot of our hemp growers are just waiting to see what happens with the tax and regulate market. As that comes to the forefront here, I think we'll see a lot of folks transition from hemp to a higher THC cannabis. And just for your awareness, I don't know if you heard from any hemp growers, but there's a process that some of our processors in the state were using to convert the CBD isolate to Delta 8 THC. Mid-summer, maybe early summer, I guess, we did send a letter to our hemp growers saying that Delta 8 THC, we were not going to consider that hemp. You're outside of the basically intent of the Farm Bill verbiage there to grow. Basically, they were converting the CBD into a psychoactive substance and selling it in gas stations and other fast convenient type stores, and we didn't think that mirrored the intent of what we were trying to do here. We told them it wasn't hemp, and this is an issue that if they do want to sell and make Delta 8 in Vermont, they should speak with the Cannabis Control Board to see if that's something that we want to see happening in Vermont. So that's an update on hemp. Are there any questions?
I personally, I didn't hear from any hemp producers up north here. I don't know if any of the other committee members have heard anything from them, but no. And of course, there's a lot less hemp growers this year than there was in the past because of the markets, I believe.
Right. Well, they were thinking this Delta 8 market would have provided an opportunity for a lot of the hemp growers to continue profiting off cannabis. And we just don't think it doesn't fit the 2018 definition of hemp. Some other states have made the interpretation that it does. But that's not the decision we had made, and I don't know if Steve Collier wants to add anything to that, or you're good, Steve.
Thanks, Carrie, and good morning, everyone. Happy to chime in if you like, but essentially, realistically, when the federal government allowed the growth of hemp, it regulated Delta 9 THC, and the reason for that is it's a psychoactive ingredient. It probably didn't contemplate Delta 8 THC because as cannabis evolves, the products that are generated from it evolve with it. But Delta 8 has a very similar effect as Delta 9. It's psychoactive. So in other words, people can get high when using it. And we did not think that children, as an example, walking into a convenience store and buying and consuming Delta 8 fit within the confines of our hemp program. So we made that decision. It may well be challenged. It hasn't been yet, but it's our plan, absent different direction, to continue to regulate it that way.
And what is the THC level of Delta 8?
Well, Senator, it can be any level of Delta 8, just like with Delta 9, the level can vary, but there's no, when both the state and Congress defined hemp, it defined it in accordance with its Delta 9 THC level, and that it could not exceed 0.3% on a dry weight basis, Delta 9 THC. Delta 8 does not have a similar standard. Delta 8, however, we think is a controlled substance under state and federal regulations because it does have that psychoactive effect. So as a controlled substance, it's not allowed to be dispersed in any way except through properly prescribed methods. So you can, people who have the ability, like a doctor, and I don't know that Delta 8 is prescribed for anything, but as a controlled substance, it's strictly regulated and it's not available. It's just like before Delta 9 THC was changed, before the hemp law was passed, there was no level of Delta 9 THC, which was allowed to be distributed. We think Delta 8 THC remains in that same rubric that it's
Yeah.
just not allowed to be distributed at all without a license. Other people have interpreted that differently. But before, we do think, as Carrie suggested, that it may be appropriate to distribute through the cannabis market where there are regulations, there are controls. We are allowing people to buy in Vermont these products. So if Delta 8, there's no reason for us to believe that Delta 8 is any more dangerous than Delta 9, but there's also no reason for us to believe that it's hemp. So
Yeah, and others.
Senator Collmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And like you, Bobby, I have not heard from any of my own hemp growers about this issue, but I appreciate Steve and Carrie's work on it. I'm remembering that Carrie said that a letter or some sort of message went out to the hemp growers. Did you get any response back from any of them?
Yeah, we did. We did a lot of phone calls. Nothing real verbal. I mean, nothing really threatening or written down, but a lot of the folks that were making it were selling it out of state and have basically moved their operations out of state. This is still legal in Texas and Florida and North Carolina. Other states are banning it through a legislative process. Basically, we didn't tell them it was legal or illegal. We just said it wasn't hemp and it didn't fit. It wasn't something that they should be doing under their hemp processor's license.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So turn it back to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Senator. Just wanted to add your timing of S102 last year was poignant. Both Laura DePietro and I are dealing with what's coming out of DPACs with the passage of the Universal Recycling Law. I feel like we're basically playing catch up. That with not allowing organics to go in the landfill, the thought is a lot of this will be diverted to farmland as a nutrient. Our first DPACs in the state have gone online this year, and that's packaged food that gets basically sent to a facility where a machine smashes it and does its best to separate the material. Now this material is either currently going into digesters. And with the passage of S102 in the residual management program, it gives us the authority to sort of look at the microplastic and Pfos contamination that's inherent in the DPAC process. We're basically, Laura's done some calculations. We're basically loading these farm fields with a phenomenal amount of plastic material. We're going to do our best to try and clean it up. We're working with the Agency of Natural Resources right now to develop a management program. Not a management program, a sampling program to figure out how bad this really is, how much plastic we're diverting to ag fields and what the level of PFAS contamination actually is. It's not great news. My first sort of brush at this was, can't we just put it back in the landfill? Why are we turning our ag fields into dumps? But that's what the law sort of directs to happen. So we're going to try and manage it as best we can and keep some of our prime ag land prime. Laura may have more to say.
That doesn't sound like a very good process to be promoting and supporting. So the packages are going into the digester, and then as the manure is pumped out of the digester, it must be it doesn't plug the pumps up and things like that from the digester where they're pumping that product out of there?
So Laura DePietro has put eyes on the process, and I'll let her fill you in on what happens. But these machines take the packaged food and separate the package from the organic matter inside with basically mechanical hammers, if you will. So it smashes up the packaging, and they do their best to separate it, but it's not we don't know what the percentage is currently. There are a lot of estimates out there. UVM is studying this with a grant from Casella, and there's not a lot of material that we can look at that closely fits the situation that's happening in Vermont.
Laura, would you like to comment on that for us? You're muted, Laura.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
There was a bill that was posted yesterday, H501, that looks to aim to enter this conversation as well. At this point in time, just for reference for volume, the depackaging facility, there's one in Vermont. It's in Williston with Casella, and it is currently, to our knowledge, transferring to 3 different digesters in the state. And so it's not ubiquitous everywhere. It's not every digester, but it is predominantly, the idea is food scraps. So like home composting, the truck that goes around and picks up all of that is getting put into this, as well as some cleaner separated materials, such as like ice cream containers. The ice cream tends to just come out because it's liquid by that time. And then there's other containers that we've seen where they're made of, like if you think of like baby wipes and plastic containers that hold that kind of stuff, they explode almost when the hammers hit them. And so they break into more smaller plastics. So there's a whole mix of different things that are going in there. And, you know, like I said, there's only 3 farms right now that are receiving this material in Vermont. We're trying to set up a sampling plan to understand what that means. We've notified all of those farms that are taking this material to share with them that not only are there microplastics that are going through this process, but because the food scraps and containers are also being brought in, there is also a concern of PFAS being used in some of those products potentially. So we're trying to learn more about the microplastic and the PFAS aspects so that we can get more information. Again, as Carrie alluded to, the universal recycling law aims to keep food scraps out, which are about 20 to 30% of the Coventry landfill's volume. But at the same time, so, you know, obviously there's an important aspect there. It's a recyclable material, but when it's packaged or it's mixed with other, you know, your bag that you put your compost in, or the plastic biodegradable fork, which is not really compostable in the near term in the way that we're working with it, those materials are getting through the system and they're breaking into smaller plastics, and plastic doesn't necessarily disappear, right? So it just gets into smaller and smaller plastics. And there's a outfit at UVM under Dr. Eric Roy who is researching this and trying to understand, because some of these microplastics can actually move up into the environmental chain, and some might be able to actually be taken up by crops and things like that, and can maybe change the soil biota. So from an agricultural perspective, as Carrie said, to keep our prime ag soils prime, we want to make sure that this isn't an effort to lose that good biodiversity in soil and health and just maintain long agricultural production fields and not have contamination that further down the road the farms are liable if there is any other future found challenges, right? So that's our concern. And there's lots of different, the non-sewage waste program is in the water quality division, and then Carrie has the residuals management program in the farm division. And so the two right now are trying to navigate these spaces, identify the gaps, work on sampling. But certainly there is a legislative conversation, I think, that needs to happen here. So we'll be talking about it all session, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think, isn't there, or wasn't there a farm over in Maine that we got material from? The farm, their animals got sick from eating this waste that was spread on their fields. And I don't know if it was from plastic, but it was from things out of the waste system at the community.
Correct, Senator. That was directly related to biosolid application. So septic sludge, biosolids are the reason that farm is no longer in business. And we've been working with the Agency of Natural Resources in identifying and sampling the sites that have had biosolid applications in the state as well. And that's more of the PFAS issue than the microplastic, but yes, you're correct.
So what we're talking about is product that's coming out of that Casella plant in Williston, where the plastic's getting by. So yeah, that's not good at all.
Carrie, maybe you could just give a quick update on the spotted lanternfly. We had couples in Windsor and Rutland County, just for awareness for folks.
Okay, Laura, I saw your lips moving.
I did. I know. I've got two mutes, so I'm toggling between because I come in through my phone. But I was just mentioning that this is also out-of-state material coming in. So there is a farm that receives material from Massachusetts. So what has gone on is, just like Casella is an aggregate of different types of operations in New York and Vermont, et cetera. In Massachusetts, there are other companies, I forget, Purpose Energy, Vanguard. These companies have outfits in Massachusetts. And so they are also importing these wastes from out of state to in-state digesters here to deal with the depackaged material that is depackaged in Massachusetts. So it's not only internally what Casella is doing, but there is nothing to say that out-of-state material can't come into state right now.
Yeah. Well, I think we get on this issue and either we've got to have a better system of unpackaging that product, or somebody's going to have to get rid of it. I don't think we should be polluting or hurting our prime ag soils or any soils in Vermont with plastic waste. I mean, we have enough problems with those, with the big white bags and things that we create ourselves on farms, without taking additional product in from other places. Anything else, Gary?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Chris, if I could just ask a question. Thank you for this lay of the land, Carrie and Laura. And I guess I'm wondering, can we anticipate some recommendations for you? I've heard, clearly that there are challenges. Some of them are based in Vermont policy. Some of them are based in the reality of the world that we live in. But are there changes you anticipate asking for, or should we start doing some research, or what are we just at a monitor? I'd hate to be just monitoring it and find out next year that we should have put a halt to it and then come up with a policy. You know what I mean?
I think one of the, Senator Stanson again, I think one of the key parts of this, I've heard the facility and seen the process. And what comes out at the other end, which is basically, it's like a milkshake, believe it or not. It looks like a milkshake. So it's very, very small particles. I think the key part, the next step is, what does UVM find? And they're doing extensive research on this. So when we get that data, I think that will be helpful of, like, how much is actually in the end product. And I think they're not too far. I don't think they're too far away from getting that data. So that will be valuable. And I think that will guide us, like, what to do next. But it's a new law. It's a new process. So we're just, we're being cautious. And I think as we learn more about the process and the research, there'll probably be some recommendations at some point.
Thank you. Is anybody looking into the water quality aspect of this? Because the milkshake, as you described, no doubt has water passing through and down some drains. Any idea if UVM is looking at that as well?
I don't know all the details of what UVM is doing. All I know is it's a big part of a research project, and they're close to getting some data to us. Maybe Laura has more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bigger process, right? So what UVM is sort of looking at this point is grabbing samples and seeing what's in the samples and then trying to create environments to see what would happen. To understand long-term or in the natural landscape, what might happen with movement, we can only use our common sense knowledge of what happens right in the landscape that we're already aware of. We don't have any like field scale studies or anything like that at this point planned. Separately though, as you may be aware, in the lake as an example, and I know over in Plattsburgh they've done more of this, there's definitely a body of research of looking at what comes out of wastewater treatment plants in terms of microplastics and Pfos, and so there is a space there. One of the challenges that we have right now with all of this is this digestate that comes out of the DPAC. There isn't a methodology for how to go about a lab process to identify how much plastic is in it. And so it's an evolving science on that end as well, on the research part. There's no EPA standard you can refer to, et cetera. So UVM is really doing, the work to figure out what is a good methodology, can it be accepted? And from there, then the state or whoever, we can all work with that and try and develop more information from there. But, for the water quality side, farms never were receiving this material. It didn't exist in Vermont because we didn't have a DPAC, but farms used to only be able to take food processing residuals, so things that were in bulk and that never were packaged. And with the change of the regulatory scheme last session with the non-sewage waste program, it sort of opened that door. And so now we're in this business of regulating this space. So it's very new. The recycling law, the non-sewage waste law, and then carry with the residual management and obviously the composting aspect. So we're going to put things together, but at this point, it's one of these where we don't have information, but we do have a body of knowledge that shows some concern.
Thanks.
Anything else, Chris?
No, I'm sure. I hope we will look at this more, but that's good for now. Thanks.
Yeah, and we, we can check with UVM, but you're in constant contact with them and will get back to us when they get back to you, right? Yep. Anything else, Carrie?
Yeah, Anson had mentioned the spotted lanternfly.
Yes.
It's a emerging pest of concern. It was first detected in Pennsylvania. It is in all the mid-Atlantic states moving north. It doesn't fly very far, but it is a passenger pest. And we did get live detections of a few on shipping material that was shipped from a quarantined area. Those live pests were caught in Rutland, caught and killed. We did treat the material that was part of that shipment to ensure any egg masses or other live adults, and we continue to monitor. We will have none right now, but in spring we will have traps set up around the state that are continuing to monitor for this pest. Where it's abundant, it is an issue. It does attack some agricultural commodities, but it's really more of an inconvenience, a nuisance type pest. It creates like a honeydew, like a black soot sort of slime on the things that it in areas where it's abundant. We are hoping it doesn't get established here. We haven't found any established or breeding populations here, and we continue to look. Its primary sort of host is the tree of heaven. That's the tree it likes to lay eggs on. There aren't many in the state. We know of less than 10. And luckily they're on state property. Our intent is if the pest does get established in the state, to use those tree of heaven trees that we know about, and specifically the ones on state land, as trap trees. We'll treat those trees. And when the spotted lanternflies come to lay eggs, the eggs won't survive. That's our plan right now for how to deal with the spotted lanternfly. We're happy that there aren't a lot of tree of heaven trees here. We're working with forest and parks to identify more tree of heaven trees. The ones that are here, we will have traps on in the spring.
There's very few trees, you said, Carrie?
It's the tree of heaven is not a very popular tree in the state. There's not a lot of them.
No. Any questions for Carrie?
Other than yes, the treatment is a neonic.
Yeah. That's the only treatment that there is?
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you'll keep us informed if it gets going good then, or before it gets going good.
Yep, we will.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Anson?
Sure. I thought maybe we'd travel down to Randolph, and Dr. Harvey's with us, our lab director. And I want to just, we've now gone beyond sort of the lab is up and running, it's functioning, it's doing well. And we've gone beyond sort of the physical, getting it up and running. Now we're sort of the governance of it. And over the summer, Dr. Harvey worked with ANR on a MOUs with ANR. So we've got a new board that's working on a strategic plan and so forth of what's happening at the lab. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning, senators. So yeah, I would say that that's one of the biggest accomplishments that we've had in the past year, is working with leadership from the Agency of Natural Resources to develop a new MOU for our governance board. Whereas before, the governance board was designed to get us set up here in Randolph Center. The new goals of the governance board will be to provide long-term strategic planning for the lab. This past year, you know, with the pandemic and everything, we certainly we faced challenges where a lot of our programs stopped their monitoring programs altogether. So we didn't see the sample submissions that we normally would have, but it offered us a really unique opportunity to sit down with our primary stakeholders and think about, you know, how the lab can diversify our services in order to be more robust and more resilient and offer a wider breadth of services to those lab users that we do serve. One thing that's definitely on our radar is the ability to test for PFAS. So both the Agency of Natural Resources, our own Agency of Agriculture, and the Agency of Transportation have extensive PFAS monitoring programs, but there's not a single lab in the state that's certified to provide that testing. All of those samples and the money associated with them go out of state. So one goal that we have is to stand that methodology up in-house, but unfortunately, we do not have the personnel to be able to do that right now. There's just not enough bodies in the lab unless we drop off some of our other programming or other testing capabilities. So one goal of this strategic planning and this governance board is to help kind of pave the way to make that happen, to help us come up with the resources and the vision to establish new testing lines here at the lab that are relevant, and that are meaningful and that can be stood up in a meaningful temporal scale. So it doesn't help us to respond 5 years later to a testing need that we have today. So that's certainly been a challenge for us, is but an opportunity for us to think about diversifying our services. It was a great experience to sit down with leadership from ANR and think long-term about the lab. And it was really motivating and inspiring to kind of sit down with them and think about what their priorities are moving forward and how we can meet them, along with, Carrie's programs and the water quality program within the Agency of Agriculture. Another big accomplishment that we had this year that I'd love to be able to share is that in May of 2021, we successfully completed an on-site audit with our primary accrediting body. One thing that's really important to state laboratories and other private laboratories is the accreditations that we hold. And by holding these accreditations, we demonstrate that we meet certain quality standards that are internationally recognized. So we have these audits every other year with our primary accreditor. Truthfully, we had many deviations on our last one, but this recent one in May, our assessor, who's been coming to us for many, many, many years, said that it was one of the best assessments he had ever had the pleasure of conducting, and he wished that all assessments were as easy as ours. So the staff that we have here working at the lab have made tremendous grounds to make quality data really part of the culture here at Vail. Of course, having this wonderful facility makes it a lot easier, but the staff has done a wonderful job with improving quality systems here at the lab.
Chris,
No, I was just applauding their report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that I would want to highlight is that we certainly faced some challenges with staffing here at the lab, in that our microbiology section was short-staffed for many, many, many months. We had 3 microbiologists leave, all pretty much concurrently, and we're left with 1 to support our entire dairy lab. But we were able to maintain testing capabilities to support the dairy industry despite these severely low staffing levels. We're fully staffed now again. And I think that just really solidifies, again, the staff's commitment to Vermont agriculture and our commitment to supporting the Vermont dairy industry. Other than that, we've really just kind of been plugging along, offering testing to support the water quality division, the farm division, different monitoring programs from the Agency of Natural Resources. We have been, like I said, working on diversifying our services. So we have opened up some lab testing capabilities to the general public. So we recently added drinking water testing to our suite of services. And a real focus of ours has just been, trying to be forward thinking and anticipate new needs before as they come down the line, really.
How many?
Mr.
how
Chairman,
many
also, I
people-
think Rebecca is being very modest that some items that the health lab couldn't do because of their overload with COVID. The drinking water is one example that the Vail lab could pick up, because the health department, just so many COVID tests coming to the health department, that we were able to take some of the pressure off of their tests that they just can't get to because of the COVID testing. So Rebecca, if you want to elaborate on that any further, but that's an important partnership that Rebecca has forged between all the laboratories in the state.
Yeah, absolutely. About, I don't know, maybe 6 months into my tenure as director, I started scheduling quarterly meetings with lab directors from the forensic lab, the health lab, and the Agency of Transportation's lab, really as a a conduit for us to think about how we can support each other and work together with common goals in mind. And there was a real need with the health lab for people to pitch in and help with COVID testing. We sent several of our staffers to the health lab to participate in COVID testing. And during the time when they had to drop a lot of their testing programs, we were able to step in and help take over. So some drinking water tests we've taken over, or we've helped to be able to supplement that for the state. Microcystins is another area of testing that we recently picked up. And this winter, we hope to add different nutrients that are important to drinking water as well.
And how many staff people do you have there in Randolph, Rebecca?
We have, let's see, including myself, I believe it's 14 full-time staff. And every summer we hire 2 seasonal temps to help with the heavy load of samples that we receive between May and October.
Yep. And do you do a lot of work or any work with the college there because you're housed right there, right?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we got established here in 2019. That first year was really us just getting settled, getting set up. Shortly after that, the pandemic hit. And VTC went fully remote for that first year of 2021. I have certainly had conversations with the chair of the science department over there. And we have lots of great ideas on things that we can do to partner. But not much has come to fruition. We have had a VTC graduate work as a summer temp here for us. And we actually had we were fortunate enough to be able to offer her a full-time position. So she's now a full-time analyst here. So that's a great example of our ability to partner with VTC. But now that, things have kind of started to pick up again, I'm not exactly sure what we'll be able to do with welcoming students here besides, we've done a lot of tours, just touring the facility with students, but in terms of more long-term research partnerships, we haven't really been able to forge those just yet.
Yep. Any questions from committee members for Rebecca? No. Well, thank you very much for your time and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Anson?
Thank you. Abby has sent along the recommendations about the Horizon situation to Linda, so that report is on. It may have arrived in your boxes or not, so that's on its way. I do want to turn it over to Abby Willard, who's head of our Agriculture Development Division. Abby and her team have really been working on the recovery in the ag sector. A lot of great things are happening as far as everything from meat to dairy to marketing to outreach to all the association groups, Maple, et cetera, all of them. So I'm going to turn over to Abby. She's got a couple highlights that she wants to go over, but you're probably seeing a lot of Abby over the next few weeks and months because we've got a lot of great initiatives that we think might be worthy of your consideration. So Abby.
Yep. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning, Senators. Nice to see you again. Again, regret the opportunity to not be in person, but hoping for brighter days in the coming months. I thought it may make sense to follow up on some of the pieces that Secretary Tebbetts addressed around meat and dairy, talk a bit about some marketing and outreach efforts and some planning for the future that's happened over the past year and kind of continues to be the focus of the Ag Development Division over the next year. I will just say, if all of a sudden my audio cuts out, just let me know. It's something to do with my internet connectivity these days, and I don't get any warning, so you won't be able to hear me. But if it happens, let me know. I'll take a pause and then get back on once the internet's more cooperative. So do those sound like appropriate topics, Senator, that you'd like to hear about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So as Secretary Tebbit said, we do continue to get feedback from the industry about the impacts of COVID. We continue to hear, and even maybe more so, about labor issues, challenges with distribution, and some of the changing consumer preferences and practices that are going back to kind of pre-pandemic times. And as we've met with businesses and producers, we're starting to again see some of these delayed challenges. So a business may have had really great online sales at the beginning of the pandemic. They may have pivoted to do more home delivery and brought on new staff, hired new positions in 2021 or late 2020. And then the growing season in 2021 has been really challenging. And we're looking at launching another COVID impact survey to the industry to just get a sense of, in this stage of recovery, how are businesses feeling at this time around their market access, around the supply chain, and looking at specific issues like labor and staffing. So not really the news that we had hoped to hear. I think we had hoped that the positive trend that many agricultural operations experienced kind of early on in the pandemic after the original challenge and setbacks was going to continue. And I think in some sectors it has, and in others it has started to become a challenge again. So we talked about the Horizon Dairy and the recommendations from the Northeast Dairy Task Force. So I did just send, as Secretary Tebbit said, send you the report so you could take a look at the recommendations. And I encourage you to invite Laura Ginsburg or Diane Bothfeld to come and speak more if there's more specific interest, while we wait to hear back from USDA on any thoughts and strategies for implementation of those recommendations. But I just wanted to note that the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, which is here and hosted at the Agency of Agriculture, is able to work on many of the challenges that were outlined in that report and many of the systemic issues that exist within the organic dairy are also challenges within the regional dairy sector. So the Dairy Business Innovation Center has received 3 rounds of funding, so over $18 million, and a pending opportunity for a 4th round of another $6 million is on the horizon. And those funds are being invested across the Northeast in addressing processing, distribution, and procurement challenges. And so we can share some of those accomplishments. There's a great website that's managed by the team at the agency that leads that program, as well as a regular email list that receives updates on the program. But there's focus on sheep and dairy marketing, on business marketing grants to actual farms, innovative on-farm climate practices, focus on looking at dairy product packaging opportunities for making some changes. There was a specialty cheese supply and demand study that was conducted, and we were able to support 2 dairy production specialist positions at UVM, and looking at adding a similar agronomist position in the state of Maine. So really great outcomes and opportunities, and we have a large granting program like the Dairy Business Innovation Center that has multiple years of investment in a dairy sector to start to address some of the challenges that exist. So I think there's lots more to talk about and share around what that center has been able to achieve in Vermont across the region. I wanted to also mention, as part of the meat sector investments, we have been talking about meat slaughter and processing capacity expansion for about a year. And we, as I think we've shared with this committee, we did a survey of state and federally inspected facilities in 2020 to get a sense of what they're facing for opportunities and challenges, and used a lot of that data and input to help guide both the funding opportunities that we have control over, so the appropriation through the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, and in our communication to USDA, they offered a public comment opportunity to share feedback around how states felt that some of the Build Back Better and other federal funding should be invested in the meat sector. And as we continue to hear, they really, as an industry, feel the labor shortages and are unable to operate at full capacity, oftentimes based on the lack of trained workforce. Infrastructure and specialization expansion needs, so both modernization of their existing facilities, but also wanting to respond to value-added smoking and curing and other value-added production practices, and needing both space and funding to support that. And then with that workforce, needing some training assistance. So while you asked Senator Starr about how have we made progress, and I think Secretary Tebbetts said we're working on it, I think there have been some successes, and Anson mentioned some of the grants, the federal funds that businesses in Vermont were successful in receiving. We've also just encouraged businesses to apply for any of the American Rescue Plan Act or Build Back Better funding opportunities in the state or coming in from the federal side to support business growth and expansion. In the place of working lands, I think it's worth noting, and there is hopefully an opportunity for a joint hearing on the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative in early February. I think February 10th has been proposed as a date where you can hear more about the FY21 investments and some sneak peeks at where the FY22 investments are looking to be made. But what I can share about FY22 is that per normal, even with over $5 million in funds to allocate, we received over $10 million in requests. So the program continues to be oversubscribed, and the demand, as we've seen in the past, when we have a larger allocation, we see an even larger demand from businesses and organizations. There was a specific carve out of a funding opportunity for meat slaughter and processing, and there was over $1 million in ask in that category, as well as meat applications that both apply, or meat applicants that applied in both the standard business pool, as well as the larger supply chain and market level infrastructure rounds. Not all of those have been decided upon, but are still being reviewed, and final decisions being made on a kind of a staggered timeline. But if there was ever a question, if the need and opportunity remains in Vermont around meat slaughter and processing, I think just the demand and interest within the Working Lands program, especially when there was this targeted approach of wanting to support the meat industry through this legislative body to make that appropriation, we can see there's ongoing need and demand. I wanted to just also note that this is a bit of a trend of what the agency has been able to do over the last year, which is make larger investments in the food system and bring additional dollars into the state. With just quick calculation, I think the agency was able, or even just within the Ag Development Division, was able to bring in over $12 million of new monies in FY22 to support food systems. So that's looking at federal grant opportunities as well as increased appropriations. So that's really a significant opportunity to think about how we're supporting various sectors that we know have greater need, like dairy and meat, looking at the supply chain, distribution and storage capacity needs that we're aware of, and just supporting businesses during a time when they're struggling due to the kind of lingering pandemic impacts. So I think we could talk more at another time about some of those new funding opportunities that have been possible in the past year, if you're interested. I wanted to then just share briefly about our ongoing outreach efforts across the sector. So following the pandemic, or even during the pandemic kind of hotspot time, the agency launched a weekly Agdev E-Newsletter. So that newsletter continues to go out each week to over 5,000 recipients. It focuses on new funding opportunities, program announcements, and updates from state and federal partners. It's been a really well-received publication, and it's very timely. They receive it, if you are a recipient, every Sunday, and it always highlights some of the most kind of pressing and priority messages each week. So we've added that in addition to all the social media and ag review and other blogs and newsletter posts that come out of the agency. But I think there's just been a real push and agenda in getting the word out and sharing more information with the ag community from our agency, which I'm really proud of. Marketing was another piece that Secretary Tebbets mentioned. So there have been a variety of those new federal funding sources that the agency has received in the last year that are focused on marketing efforts. So looking at both local marketing as well as domestic marketing and even international marketing opportunities. So we've received marketing grants to work on maple specifically, on dairy specifically, and then just more generally marketing efforts within agriculture. And those funding opportunities are focusing on looking at assistance to retail operations around promoting local, creating web materials for more consumer resources around the promotion of local, some cohort peer-to-peer training opportunities, and some domestic marketing campaigns. So originally they were focused on international marketing, and we've made some shifts due to the pandemic to focus more domestically. But I think there's a lot of those more details that we could share with the committee if there's interest. And then lastly, I think this planning for the future. So two pieces that I wanted to focus on, but acknowledge that there's been a lot of focus on planning. So there's been the climate action plan, which others who in the agency are greater experts on that can share if there's interest. The Payment for Ecosystem Services Working Group continues to develop some plan components. The Future of Ag Commission, which was established by the governor last year and met throughout 2021, and then some very recent commitment to some diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the agency. So I think we could talk a little bit about the Future of Ag Commission kind of process and approach while we wait to see when the commissioners' plans and priority recommendations can be made more public. And also let you know that the agency is looking to do a contract with a consultant to do diversity, equity, and inclusion work within the agency over the next year, which I think will be really exciting and timely work that we're happy to share more about. So that's what we've been up to. I don't know if there's any questions or reactions.
Yeah, sounds like you've been pretty busy. I know I this summer was talking with the folks at Cabot in Cabot, and they were saying that if they had the labor, that they could make as much cheddar cheese, they could sell as much as they could possibly make. And I didn't know, have you had conversations with them about a different modernization of their plant, or some way that they could put in more equipment or different equipment to get rid of some labor? Because they're having an awful time trying to have enough help around to make the product. Have any of you had any conversations with Cabot in regards to that issue?
Yes, Senator, we've had, we assembled all the major dairy manufacturers. We had a conference call with them a couple of months ago, and we just recently had a follow-up conversation. We're looking at, short-term strategies, but also long-term strategies, as I mentioned, about finding more workers. One of the short-term strategies we looked at was potentially foreign labor and how to access that through the various 3 visa programs, H-2A, H-2B, and then the J-1 program. So with the Commerce Agency, we held a webinar recently for everyone in agriculture and also the service industries as well to just to let them know about those programs, because I think some of the traditional programs that are out there, there is a really good wage. They're offering bonuses. But that's not allowing them to operate, as you mentioned, 7 days a week in Cabot, which they would really like to do. They were only, at one point, were only able to operate maybe 5 days a week, which is really going back to the farmer, because that milk is not being processed. And of course, the world has gone back to really loving cheese and butter and sour cream and flour and cooking and all that. So it's one of those, and then the distribution aspect as well, getting it to markets. So it's one of those, and they talked about housing. You know, we need more housing in rural areas that's affordable. And that's a long-term strategy for a plant like Cabot. Could they put some housing near the Cabot plant that could help with some of their workers being able to, live close to where they work? So there's some long-term strategies, but the short term, we're just trying to do all creative things with that. But I would encourage you at some point, maybe we have a list of all the ones we talked to, and they talked about affordability, about some of their attracting workers from other parts of the state and how important it was to make sure it was affordable to come here, because they are recruiting from other states to bring workers here. But sometimes when they get here, they realize that, housing's pretty expensive. Heating your home is pretty expensive. Transportation can be expensive. So it's a long-term strategy, but it affects agriculture in a big way.
Questions from committee members for Abby? Well, you're letting Abby off easy.
I appreciate that. It's still early.
Well, we'll get you the next time. And the farm show, that's off this year, so that's kind of too bad too.
Are you the reigning champions of the cooking contest? I can't remember.
I've been working on my cooking skills for that.
We had trouble boiling water last year in the Senate.
I've done a lot of HelloFresh meals to learn that all sauces is sour cream and something else.
You get another year of practice.
Yeah.
The one thing, or one issue that we need to stay really tuned in on is these grant programs, I think, from the feds, in making sure that when they're set up, that they're accessible by our agricultural businesses, including farmers, along with our small businesses. And sometimes sometimes when we're doing legislation, we get so concerned about making it so tight and rigid that people can't apply, or they can apply, but they all get rejected. And one issue that I mentioned earlier was if you showed any type of a profit on your farm papers, you were automatically disqualified from applying for these grants that were supposedly made available this summer. And like talking with farmers, if they had a decent sugaring operation and they made money from sugaring, the money all goes in that farm account. And so it may show that they made a few dollars, and that kicked them right out of any of the grants that were being proposed. So I think it's as we move forward, it's very important for us as legislators, but for you folks as agency people, to, if you see this happening, to let us know, because sometimes we miss things.
So Senator Starr,
Uh,
I did
yeah.
act as a reviewer on the grants you're talking about for agriculture. And I can
Yes.
give you a little summary of the number of grants that I reviewed, and that's the ACCD Economic Recovery Bridge Program or Bridge Recovery Program. And
Yeah.
yes, some farmers did not achieve a grant there because of their total profit and loss statement from April 20th, from March 20th through April 21st. So yes, that if you had a positive over that 12-month period, then yes, you would have been denied. But I've reviewed 29 applications. 3 were not eligible due to the profit and loss showing the profit, as you mentioned. So 3 out of 29. 6 are still out as incomplete. We're going back and forth trying to get some data fixed up, and it's still open. Applications are still coming in. So 20 applicants have been awarded $832,400, around that number. I didn't get into the cents. The highest award was the maximum of $150,000, and that did go to a dairy farm. The lowest was $1,900, and that was a small maple operation. But maple and dairy and a value-added forestry and 1 malt. So malt is, a malting house. There's not many of those in Vermont, so I may have given away the store on that. But it was and is a lot to that application, and it is time consuming. I know Vermont Housing Conservation Board Farm Viability has been assisting farms come in. You can, when a service provider is helping, you see their name as well on the application because they assisted filling it out. A few, we've tried hard to encourage farmers and ag-related businesses to take part. But I think the complexity of the application, you had to also show a negative net income on your taxes for 2020. So that was a big deal. I have family that still farms, and the conversation and receiving the government payments that they did in 2020, some farms did show a positive. It might not have been very big, but once you showed a positive there on your taxes, you were out as well. So yes, there were certainly some barriers. The complexity of the application, even with encouragement to work with farm viability for assistance, I have only reviewed 29 applications that were specifically agriculture. So it is a very small number. The ones, I think it's gotten out into the dairy world that's possible. So I've seen a few more dairy farms come through lately, but it's been a very small number overall. So you're correct. There were some concerning areas on that application for farmers.
And Diane, do you know if, have you folks been, or has ACCD been working on to try to revise that application and the regs on the application?
I think that they may be coming forward with some recommendations. They certainly are well aware of the concern areas of the showing a profit on a profit and loss statement, as well as the profit on the income taxes. So I think they would be, it is truly their grant program. I am assisting on the ag applications. Some of the things that throw them off of the amount of depreciation that a dairy farm puts into their profit and loss, just they can't, that's uncommon for businesses outside of agriculture. So we have discussions on those kind of things, why the depreciation is so high, why it hits in December. It's all those kind of agriculture related questions that I've been assisting with, but it's truly their program. And I do believe they'll come back with some concern areas for the legislature this year.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, because, but if we had only 29 applications and 20 of them made it, I mean, the percentage is good there.
Yes, and I think the incompletes will get there. There's a lot of matching of numbers, and it's detail oriented. And so usually the incompletes are somebody's missed a check in a box, or their numbers don't match completely. And, you can't do this close enough. It's got to be a match of the numbers with the documentation they provided. So that's the usual on the incompletes. We did certainly find some farms that scratched out a profit and loss of milk income was X and my expenses were Y, and that's not enough. Just 2 numbers is not enough. You had to show your income areas and more of your expense areas to be able to do this. So there certainly was some areas of filling out a business profit and loss statement that farmers had to go back and work on, but it did not have to be tremendously extensive, but more than just income was X and expenses were Y. You had to show some more detail in that. And I think farm viability was assisted farms and getting the data together and doing a more extensive profit and loss statement.
Yeah. Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Diane, forgive me if you mentioned this and it flew by me. The 8 of you have done such a remarkable job reporting to us this morning. There's a lot of information that we're taking in, but you did mention that the application period is still open and somewhere north of $800,000 has been awarded. Do you know what the number is that's left to be awarded roughly?
So the grand total was 30 million toward this program. And I believe we're around total, not just the agricultural products, around the 5 million mark. So there's a lot left. But ACCD would be the one to give an overall of, and they had several different granting programs. This was the economic bridge recovery or bridge recovery program specifically that I worked on. So I don't have information on all their programs. I would encourage you to have ACC give a more thorough report of what's left, but I believe we're right around the 5 million mark with a grand total of 30 million to send out. So there's money available. And we've tried to make that clear to farmers that there's money available, please apply, but hasn't been extensive applications at this point.
Thanks, Diane.
So is it 5 million that's been spent, Diane? So there's 25 million left?
In that ballpark, I would encourage you to get more specific numbers out of ACCD.
That's not very good news. If we had 30 to spend and we've only spent 5, there's got to be some problems somewheres.
Yeah. Senator, I would recommend you bring this up in appropriations because it's not just here. There's other water quality dollars in ANR. And, I have a new role in the last year at a municipality. We've gotten grants awarded in August and just signed contracts like a week ago. The state's having a hard time getting dollars out the door, which is frustrating.
No. Other questions for Diane on the grants program or anything else that she looks after, which is many areas. How many, this is different than what we've talked about, but do you have a calculation on the number of farms that went out of business, in the last year or two since the pandemic started?
I believe the dairy.
I think Go ahead, Diane.
So E.B. Flory from the dairy section provided me the January numbers this past week, and 41 dairy farms ceased operations last year. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers of what occurred in 2020. The implementation of the base at certain co-ops caused some shuffling around, and then the continued pressure on that caused some shuffling. We had, with the Danone Horizon announcement, 4 of those farms have ceased operations since that announcement back in August. So kind of a mixed bag of retirement and other market pressures, but 41 for the 2021 calendar year.
That includes the organic guys.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah. And do you have a breakdown if they were the small guys, the medium, or the large?
I need my friends from water quality are on the line listening to this, and it's the time of year to provide me that update of the categories of LFO, MFO, and small farm, certified small farm operations. So I'll be getting that information from them shortly, I believe. But I don't have that yet.
Well, we'll check in later with you. Are there other questions for from the committee?
If there's time,
Good,
Mr. Chairman, could I let you know about a grant that the agency received to expand services to farmers for stress and mental health?
Well, yeah, we're always interested in grants and
So the agency was able to apply for the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network funding that comes directly to the Agency of Agriculture. And we have 4 main areas of that. We're going to have a half-time position at the Agency of Agriculture to act as a liaison between our field staff and the Farm First program. Many times our field staff, when they go to inspect a farm, they may be causing a bit of stress when they get there because it's an inspection, but also they come back to the agency with reports of greater concerns of, the farms that they visit in some cases, the mental health, the family issues, things are happening there. And this position through this grant will assist the field staff making those connections to Farm First and doing the follow-up of, did the services help that farm family? So that's one area that person should come on by the end of this month. And then we'll do some training for our staff as well as field staff for lenders and feed companies and anybody who wants to take part so they can recognize concern areas when they go to the farm. Understanding, are we just got a bad day, or we've got something that's a bigger issue of great concern of potential suicide or any of those things. So they have a little more comfort level of understanding what they're seeing and how to get those resources. The money will also help support the Farm First program to have a coordinator and another counselor to be able to work with those folks that may have concerns. The Farm First program is also developing a peer network, so farmers can talk to farmers around some of these issues that may not be critical, but there's concerns there. So a farmer-farmer approach. And then we will be doing an assessment on the migrant domestic labor on farms in Vermont and how we know there's an issue. There was a report that came out around the concerns and issues, but how do we provide those services to those folks that in the migrant labor concern may not be able to leave, or may not choose to, or may not be able to leave the farm, and the domestic labor, it's a hard group to reach out to, and how do we best get those services to them? So those are the main parts of the grant. We'll also be updating the Farm First materials and making sure that we get it out there, that everybody understands these services are available for all farms, all types of farms in Vermont. So those are the main aspects of the grant. We're digging in and getting our start now, and it'll go on for about a year or so, potentially a year and a half. So, and hopefully it'll be further funded in the future. But right now it's what we're working on. Certainly some issues. We had a flurry of calls right before the holidays of concerns with farms and farm families, and Farm First covered those and took care of things. But that liaison position will be extremely helpful at the agency, because we do hear from either farmers themselves or family members with concerns, and having somebody on point for that will be very helpful for us.
Well, it sounds like if your phone was ringing, there's quite a lot of unrest out in the farm community then. Have you found that most of that is caused financially?
Yeah, when people call into Farm First and when they start working with them, it does usually begin with finances, and then other things usually start cropping up of potential family issues, divorce, drug and alcohol abuse, other things start to pop up, but the stress of finances seems to be the reason they call, but on further conversations, other things come to light. But yes, financial, Farm First works very closely with the Farm Viability Program and also the USDA program for agricultural mediation. So they do a lot of finding the right resources that can help alleviate the stress, but also provide specific counseling for those farms if it's beyond, some of the other issues that crop up. So it's a helpful program. This funding will allow, right now, farmers would get 3 counseling sessions free and we'll be able to expand that to 12. The three is helpful, but it's usually not quite enough. You know, things are just getting started and then the farmer is expected to pay, and that doesn't always continue. So adding more of those free services will help potentially get to the root of some of those concern areas.
Yeah, well, you know, for what I know about alcohol and divorces and those things, a lot of that starts from lack of proper money, and that's why a few minutes ago we were talking about the grants program, and we've got what 450 farms and 29 have applied. You know, there gives you pause there to say, well, how come 450 of them didn't all apply? You know, so I think we've all got to do a better job trying to get this federal money out the door to where it can really help these families and help the economy and in the whole 9 yards. Anything else, Diane?
I'm sorry, I had to take a meeting at 9 o'clock. It sounds like you talked about Danone Horizon. Anson, did you speak of the national level NASDA work? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. And so those are the big areas that have taken up my time this past year. Besides money, besides the budget, and we'll talk about that at a later date.
Yeah, it won't be long. I think the 18th, maybe we do the budget or something like that. And we can chat about it.
Sounds good.
Any other questions from committee members for Diane or no? Mr. Secretary, do you have anything?
No, it's been an honor to see you all again, and I know. No, I think we're in good shape. I mean, there are many other issues that we didn't get to that will crop up over the next few weeks. But again, really appreciate your partnership. I want to thank a number of partners that are out in the field, whether it be the Farm Bureau or NOFA or Rural Vermont or Farm Viability, Farm to Plate, all those groups, many out there that are working with us and helping us, supporting and supporting the ag economy. So they're great partners, as well as you all folks are great partners. And we're looking forward to a really productive session, great opportunity before us to do some wonderful things over the next year, and we look forward to it. Call on us at any time. The point people, pick up the phone, give us a call, and we'll get in there and get the information you need for you. But we appreciate your engagement.
Yeah, well, thanks for everything, and it is I'll be meeting with my House counterpart later this week or early next week to see which side's gonna start certain issues, and we'll be meeting with you folks, I believe, early next week, maybe, to see what you're gonna be proposing. So, but we've always had a good working relationship, and look forward to continuing that into the future. So if there are no other questions, thank you very much for your time this morning and your participation.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.